Hi everyone. Today on Cattlemen Talk, I will be talking with Josh Hanning. Josh is an FSA District Director here in Oregon, and he's coming on to talk to us about CFAP. For those who might not know, CFAP stands for Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, and it's a program built towards helping farmers and ranchers in this difficult time. So he's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about the application process. I hear there's a very fast turnover time if you haven't got your application in yet already. We'll also be talking about the different aspects of the application program, as well as the deadline. It is coming up very soon. So here we go.
Sure. My name is Josh Hanning. I've worked for the USDA Farm Service Agency for 20 years. I'm currently a district director in Oregon for the northeast portion. I cover between the Dalles and Wallowa County. Right now, I'm also the acting state director for the state. So that's kind of a bunch of big fancy titles, but that's the current capacity that I'm in with the agency.
Okay. And you're here to talk about CFAP. Can you let us know what that stands for and let us know a little bit about that program?
Sure. The CFAP stands for the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. And the big winner, I would say, if we can pick winners and choosers, are the livestock producers. I would say this is one of the biggest overall users and beneficiaries of this program for Oregon, has been the livestock producers of Oregon. And how that's worked, and there's a couple ways that's worked for the producers of Oregon. We've been able to pay you for the number of livestock that you sold between January 15th and April 15th of 2020. We've been able to pay you for your inventory, your highest inventory between April 16th and May 14th of this year. Livestock is one of the only products agriculture products that we are utilizing for a 2020 payment. So that's where we're at on the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, CFAP. There's different payment rates as we get into these categories, and if we want to go through that, just let me know if you would like to go through that as well.
Yeah. So a little background. This program was part of the stimulus package.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
To help farmers.
Yeah, it was part of the. I believe the figures were like 19.8 billion that was approved during this, and then 16.9 of it was delivered in the CFAP program. Roughly 2.9 billion of it was put into Farmers Feed box program that was anything after April 15th. So that's kind of the cutoff date that we've used for that. The agency as a whole has used for that, and we've interpreted that. To date, in Oregon, we have paid and processed roughly 2,400 applications for livestock growers in Oregon. Over all dollars, over all commodities, we've paid over $66 million out in Oregon, and that's been over 4,000 applications. So that's where we're at currently. Again, I don't have the exact numbers on just livestock, but that is the biggest end user of this program in Oregon.
Okay. Do you know the exact specifics on how they're calculating for livestock?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have is we have different categories of that in the livestock, and anything less than so there's two ways to look at it, and there's two payment processes that we two approval processes. There's two funds that they draw out of. They draw out of one fund for anything that was sold between January 15th and April 15th, and there's a separate fund that they draw out of for your inventory after April 15th, between April 16th and May 14th. So on the first one, if you did sell anything during that time, under the CARES Act payment part 1. So if you sold any livestock that were under, feeder cattle that were under 600 pounds, that's $102 a head. If you sold some feeder cattle that were over 600 pounds, that's $139 a head. If you sold any slaughter cattle, and we have a long definition of slaughter cattle, it's been defined several times, but in a nutshell, that's slaughter cattle that were ready to be processed at that time, on feed, and we have an age category they're in as well. So, and those are $214 a head. Cull cows, mature cows, those are $92 a head. And then all other cattle we have is $102 a head. Now on the category 2, where it talks about the inventory, that's just a straight $33 a head. We're sticking with those same categories. So there's no differentiation between categories when it comes to that.
Okay. So when they're applying, what information do they need to supply? Just like you said, the different head and the different cattle, or what information are you specifically looking for in the application?
So what our offices are looking for, we're not looking for your actual receipts. We're not actually looking, have your receipts on file in case you do get pulled for a spot check. Have all your documentation, calving books, turnout dates, whatever documentation you use to calculate this stuff, especially on category 2 on the inventory, financial records. If you do get spot checked, but you do not have to provide that to the office at this time. It's simply a self-certification for the grower. They come in, they certify that on a form. The form number is a 3114 form number for the CFAP application. They submit that to the office. And when I say come in, that we're in coronavirus times, so we take these via email. Some offices, we do have appointments open by appointment only. It varies by county how that is. So each person will work with their local office. They dial up one of our phone numbers. Somebody in our office is going to be answering that phone and helping and assisting the grower with that. And they would make that either an appointment face, they would fill it out online, we would work with them. And then on the eligibility documents, a lot of folks have, especially livestock growers throughout the state, have applied for a lot of our programs in the past, and they may or may not have their eligibility docs, but they don't have to have that right up front. They can file those within 60 days of filing this initial application.
Okay. Great. So that answers a lot of questions for our producers.
Yeah.
I was reading the little form that I got, and it said that there's actually a difference between an individual and a corporate entity.
Sure.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. If you have a corporation, that you can get a different set of payment limitations. So the payment limitation for an entity is, the payment limitation's $250,000, okay, right, for a personal legal entity. So for a corporation, if they have, they can gain more limitations if they have if they're providing the requirements that are there. And the requirements, I believe, are 400 hours of active personal labor for each member, and that's a self-certification. That's unlike a lot of different programs that we have had before. We haven't had this a lot in our programs. Usually it's a hard and fast payment limitation. So that is something that you can apply for. Again, something that's kind of a misnomer in this $250,000 calculation, and whether your payment's $250,000 or whether your payment's $2,000, it takes, right now there's 80% adjustment factor that it takes off the top of that, okay? So say you were going to get $1,000 in this program. Right now, you're only going to get $800 in this program because we're holding back 20% until the end of August, the sign-up date, to see where we're at. Make sure we don't go over that $16.9 billion that I had talked about earlier nationwide, and then release the second, that quote unquote tranche of payments. So
I did want to just ask really quick, what's the timeline as far as someone applies and the turnaround?
well, right now we got a very successful turnaround. Right now we're processing these applications within 8 days.
Oh, wow.
I'm able to see that data live from some dashboards that we have. We're able to process that. We're able to get those applications in, review that, make sure it's correct, and all we do is we get the application in, we review with the grower, the livestock producer, and we say, we just make sure they're all in the right category because it's their certification. We look it over, make sure that it's all signed properly, we approve it. Now, if we don't have the eligibility documentation on file, that's up for the producer grower to work with us to get that in there. But we're actually taking these and approving these within 8 days at this moment in time.
Wow.
Now, sure, there's some outliers, that are slower here or there, but there's maybe different things that have happened. But that's a pretty good time frame that, and I'm pretty proud to talk about that with our local offices and how they're really doing a good job on that. And I want to reiterate, if all the eligibility documents in, that payment will be made within that 8-day period too. So, if we're still missing the payment limitation documentation, there's like 4 forms. There's only 4 other forms that we need to, typical government worker, only 4 more forms. but there's only 4 more forms that we would need for that eligibility if we don't already have that, Robin. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's an incredible turnaround.
So doing really good on that.
Help everyone. And the deadline for the application? Yeah,
deadline's August 28th. So the deadline is August 28th. That's the deadline for the program, for the CFAP program, for all commodities. They're standing pretty firm on that this time. If things do change, please look for each county has been doing their own outreach. We've been doing a lot of outreach statewide as well, going to different organizations like yourself, like the OCA, and really appreciate being the time today, taking the time and doing this today. The outreach, if that does change, we will have we will publicize that in every one of our offices. So I will say this, and whether it affects livestock or whether it affects some of your growers that also have other commodities, we have had commodities that have changed. Payment rates have changed. Livestock has not. But as we move forward in this, there may or may not be, I don't know right now if things change. They just tell us all of a sudden they change on what commodities or payment rates. Some things may change. And if things do change, be watching out for that. And we may, be able to add to or increase later, but that's where we're at this moment in time. I guess I will say another thing. There has been it is whether there's in certain cases, whether the livestock were sold or in inventory, if you approach some of those really close to sale dates on April 15th or really close to owning the cattle before or after January 15th, because you had to own the cattle by January 15th if you were going to claim them in the sold as well. Was something I should have pointed out earlier. There has been some of those questions. Work with your county offices. Make sure they're understanding you, you're understanding them, and before the certification happens, we don't want to have anything come on down the road when spot checks do happen. So
just make sure you have everything in order and keep everything organized as far as dates and timelines.
Yeah, great. Absolutely.
Okay. And where can they go online to find more information or the application itself?
So I really encourage them, if they haven't gone into, I really encourage them, one, to talk to the local office. We have a good working relationship with each one of our offices. Are hands-on, and they can do a lot of work with the growers one-on-one. But if they don't want to do that, everything can be done on farmers.gov/CFAP, and that's CFAP. Again, farmers.gov/CFAP, and that they can essentially do the whole entire application process right there, then work with the local office on their eligibility forms. So I mean that can be done right there, and everything that we talked about today is on that website.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Josh, for coming on and talking about this. That's a great program and assistance for our farmers and ranchers who really need it right now. So we greatly appreciate the work you're doing.
No, thank you for taking the time and doing this. Really appreciate it, Robin.